Welcome back to another episode of the map making tutorial series, whatever you want to call it, the tutorial. We are ready to start importing buildings into the map. We're ready to start building our farms. A majority of this work is it's basically design and housekeeping. At the very basic level, it's basically housekeeping. It's making sure you're keeping your texture files small, organizing your textures properly when you're importing objects, and placing the buildings in the correct places. That's not too difficult of a concept. A lot of this is just organizational stuff. Once you learn these very basic principles, you're going to be importing a lot of different things into your map. We're going to start off very simply with very simple objects without any animations on them, and then we'll build up to we'll do some material editing after this in the next episode, and then after that we're going to start importing objects with animated objects that comes with them, so like animated doors, like garage doors and stuff like that. And we want to know how to animate those doors so that the garage door lifts up and when we want to store our machinery or whatever, or the doors slide open. We want to know how to carry over those animations with the object that we're importing. So we're going to do that after that, and then we'll get more in depth with with animations after that. So let's start off on a very basic level. As you can see, I kind of did a little bit more work on the map, just adding a couple features. I just painted the ground over there. I kind of like that look. By the way, to like painting, like making your little wheel or the radius of the circle just really small, and then painting over like this is going to get you those little dotted looks. That's kind of how I replicated, or how I kind of textured up this river bottom over here. And obviously I need to do a lot more of that throughout here. This isn't all, in real life, this isn't all green green pastures. This very sandy area of Utah. So I'm gonna have to do that throughout. I basically did that. I did that generalized painting using this. So you can see kind of the areas that I worked on already. Generally, I just kept this image above and I just painted over this, and then I would make it invisible again like that. Very easy stuff to do. And the plane is going to be helpful for placing objects as well. So I went ahead and so before we get into this, start designing the farm, some things that you might want to do first: make sure you got your terrain perfect, the right where you want it. You should have been doing that before the trees, before we ran the tree script, but do it now, just to make absolutely certain this is what you want. Because once you start adding in the farms, it makes just progressively adding more and more things to the map is just gonna make everything a hassle. Because you're gonna have to level off the ground for the buildings and all that stuff. So I went ahead and splined this trench along the railway through the road. I went ahead and I painted by spline where the railway runs through, and then also this road that runs parallel to that. I did all that. What you can do now is these splines actually show up in game. They're really annoying. I don't know if I mentioned this, but you can just click on the spline and click the invisibility check mark over here, or the visibility check mark under attributes. You can do that for all these and they will not appear. We can also put that under the placeables.onCreate transform group that we're going to create later on. They won't, that everything placed in that transform group will not show up with collisions or be completely invisible, will not show up in the map. Super convenient little onCreate script callback that you can do in Giants Editor for placeables, but we're not doing placeables. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to do something very basic here. So I want a shed that kind of looks like this. Okay, this is going to be my first farm. I'm going to work on this farm, and there's a couple little bins. I think it's really cool. Definitely a lot of hay that is made in this part of Utah. I think Utah is mainly hay for their agricultural activities. So I found a barn that kind of looks like this. And that's, you're going to have to make compromises when you're map making. You're going to have to find buildings that are approximations of the buildings that you want on your map or on your farm if you're trying to replicate a farm. Unless you know Blender, and you can edit stuff in Blender and bring them into Giants Editor. Otherwise, I just compromise. So I'm going to open up Simon Family Farms here. This is a map I did. I think this this hay shed is dang near perfect for what I need. It's kind of got you know, these center poles that I don't need, but I know I don't care. All right, so we got the hay barn. Make sure you're selecting that parent transform group. You know, I don't want the siding only. You know, I don't want to export that. I just want the hay barn as a whole. Okay, make sure you're doing that. Sometimes you'll get into maps where this stuff is really disorganized and like, you know, the parent transform group is at 000 way over there, and like the rest of the building, these parts will be underneath of that, and that like that makes placing the building on your map incredibly difficult because, you know, the 0 points over there instead of right here, you know, we want to be able to move all of this stuff together. So just be careful of that. Something that I ran into when I was first started map making. I'm going to click File, Export Selection with Files. I'm going to go under, let's see here, Desktop. I have it on the desktop. I'm going to go to Textures. I already exported something for the bridge. Let's just call this Hay Barn. Do you want parent directory structure? No. I always keep the game relative paths. Need to test if I can just say no and no to that. Okay, so before we import it, we want to make sure that we, you know, keep it organized with our textures here. I'm always forgetting where this map is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the textures wound it up under textures here. Okay, I want them at the front of the file with everything else, just to keep everything organized. Okay, I don't want, you know, have to go through dozens of file paths up here to get to the textures that I need. So I'm going to edit this Hay Barn i3D in Notepad++. I'm going to do this. Just delete all this. You can also, to get rid of those, you can do Control F, replace, and then you would just type in textures / and then leave nothing under here. Okay, and then you could do find next, replace, or you can do replace all and it'll just replace all of them. Super easy way of doing it. It just speeds up the process so much more. I often just keep that line in there when I'm going through and adding stuff, importing stuff, so that I can just hop into the i3D in Notepad, click that button, done. Okay, so I just copy and pasted them in here. I'm gonna delete that. I don't need bridge anymore. I already imported that one. And then Hay Barn, I have not imported Hay Barn yet, so I don't want to delete that yet. I need to import it first, then bake it into the map. So importing. Okay, now I can delete it, as long as you're saving your map after you've imported it. Okay, so I got that in. Look at that. Now our texture folder, it looks so much neater and nicer. Okay, so we have it. We can click Control B and then just left click, bring it down here, or you can Control B and just drag, hold down left click. That's fine. So I don't want my scene graph cluttered. You know, it's already cluttered, but you know, I want to keep this organized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 transform groups. I'm going to create one called Places. You can name this whatever you want. You can keep, this is just how I organize my maps. I'm going to create another one called Farm 1. It's helpful to label these Farm 1, Farm 2, Farm 3, because when you're doing farmlands and you want, you know, you want to know which one's the default farm, which is usually 1. You can change, you know, you can change that. You can make Farm 5 the default farm if you want. It's not a huge deal, but it's helpful to stay organized because when you're doing placeables and you want to bind the placeable to the farmland, aka like you want to buy, you know, a cow pen, that comes with the land. You know, it isn't just like you can use the cow pen on that land, but you can't use the rest of the farm, stuff like that. You want to bind it to the farmland, then you need to know, you just stay organized. I need to take a sip of coffee here. 1 second. There we go. You need to stay organized, you know, so that you know where your placeables are going, if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna click on the Hay Barn, Control X, Control V. Now, some of you are going to be like, why don't I put the farm at, you know, Control B, the parent group, and put that right here, and then drag the Hay Barn over here? Don't do that, because for organizational purposes, I'm going to Control Z out of that. Okay. For organizational purposes, you might want to put your placeables in here. Or you might want to put something in here, you know, that you want zeroed out. I shouldn't say placeables because we're going to make a placeable on create group where the placeables will disappear when you load up the map. So keep it at 0, 0, 0. All right, that you're gonna want that. Trust me. You want in case you want to put something in this group that needs to be zeroed out. You know. Okay, so hay barn, got it in here. I'm gonna raise it above the surface a little bit. I'll raise up that plane. This is a super simple object, and then this appears to be the barn right here. You can kind of make it out. Again, I need higher res plane images. I'm just gonna put it right here. That's fine with me. You know, I'm kind of improvising here, but maybe you want to be super specific and you kind of want to adjust the scale of this barn. Maybe you want to like, you know, bring this in a little bit like that. You know, that almost looks kind of nicer actually. You know, bring it into points, you know, adjust the scales over here. Typically you want, you don't want these parent groups rotated at all. You want them translated at all because you want to be able to just say, hey, this is 90 degrees to the origin. You know, you always want it referencing the origin. If I had this at like, you know, if I had this group at 45 degrees, okay, and I don't even know where my hay barn went. Oh, there it is. At 45 degrees, look what that does. All right, and now when I press like, when I want this at 90 degrees, it's actually going to be 45 degrees in the other direction. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind, keep these, keep everything, keep the rotations right, so that you can actually just rotate the building itself. Okay. All right, so that was super simple, right? That's like you can do that for any simple object. Now let's get into objects that have that are coming from like placeables. So maybe you want an object that's part of a placeable, but like placeables that are coded as objects that have extra nodes, which are these transform groups, nodes and placeables. That's what they're called in placeables. They're transform groups, but they're also called nodes in the XML. So it's going to get a little confusing since I'm not teaching you placeables right now. But there are things that are in there that you do not need if you're just importing it as an object and not something that's physically functional. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. I went ahead and downloaded the MW Hoff pack, this placeable USA. Okay, so now this pack has a whole bunch of zipped buildings within it already, I believe. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open mod and open that zip file. Okay, I'm gonna let it do its thing here. Okay, and I can choose once I unzipped it, I can check. There might be extra zip files in there, so it might not open. This screen might not even show up. There might not be anything that shows up. You have to go back in, press open mod, open the folder that was unzipped, and then do the same process over again. Have Giants Editor unzip the physical mod. Okay, in this circumstance, it's composed, that one zip folder is composed of a dozen, 2 dozen i3D files within it. Okay, and I can choose which one I want. So this is, you know, Hayloft. Let's do farmhouse. Which one's the white farmhouse? I like the look of that one. Farmhouse B, and I'm gonna press OK. Oh, that's the blue one. That's okay. We can import the blue one too. Okay, so what I was talking about before. Okay, so here's the parent transform group. That's 0, 0, 0. That's nice. Look at all this stuff that we don't need. Spawn point. We don't need spawn point. This is not a placeable. I mean, it is a placeable. We don't want it as a placeable. We just want the physical object. We don't need that stuff. So I'm going to delete that. Clear area. That's for placeables as well. Delete that. Sleep trigger. Don't need that. Camera is, oh, we're using that camera. Never mind. You can't delete the camera that you're currently using. So that's what we're viewing this through. Sleep trigger. We don't need that. Day and night. Those are for the windows. So those are our lights. We definitely want to keep those. Those will look nice. This is all the miscellaneous stuff. Maybe you don't want this stuff in here. You know, you can go ahead and delete them if you really want. I'm going to keep them in there. Then there's a number of other, you know, objects within this. There's a staircase. There's the, you know, it depends on how the person modeled the building, really. And there's other stuff in here. All of this. So all of this is going to get export it. So I'm going to go, so I can go ahead and export that if I really wanted to. I'm not going to repeat the process. You understand the gist of it. Go into Giants Editor, open the object in Notepad++, correct the file paths, go into where the textures were put, copy and paste all the textures to the front of the folder, and go back and delete the files, import the i3D, delete the older i3D. Okay, so let's go look at, let's say you want a cow barn. Is there a cow barn in here? It's all in German. There's a pig barn that's similar to a cow barn. This is kind of cool looking pig barn too. I like it. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in here as well. Let's look through. Transform. Okay, those are objects. So switch for the fans. That's something I'll teach you. So this one has animations on it. Okay, so we haven't gotten into animations yet, but placeable animations are different from the animated objects that are baked into a map. They're completely different. I mean, the animation is the same, but there are extra lines of code that you need to add. So, be wary when you're adding animated objects. If you do decide to add an object like this, make sure you are watching the episode after this next one where we talk about adding those animations into your animated objects XML. Otherwise, you will run into errors. You will run into errors in your log. You don't want that. So. All right, so I don't need animal trigger. These doors are probably gonna have animations on a gate trigger. And you can check if they have animations on them by going to Window User Attributes. And so I'm almost certain this. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I apologize. In maps with animated objects in them, that you'll be able to see under User Attributes. Okay, it'll be a couple lines. I'll show you that soon. Don't worry about that. But just be careful with these animated objects because, they're not going to have user attributes and you could run into errors. Okay, we don't need the navigation mesh. We need the visuals. Clear area, level area, ramp area, foliage area, none of that. Warning stripes, probably not. I don't think you want to keep those. So we've already cleaned up animal load trigger. We don't need that. Feeding, we probably don't need the triggers that come along with that. Okay. So just completely strip down, the stuff that you do not need before you import. And the reason why I'm teaching you this is because when you are importing that object, there are going to be stuff like that you may end up deleting. But the textures that you've imported, you're going to delete the object in your map. Let's say I don't want these fans on here, right? Or okay, that's a sound box. Let's say I don't want these fans in there, and I import this whole thing into my map and then I delete the fans. That texture's still in the texture file. The texture for those fans are still in the textures file. And so I need to go through and try to find those textures and delete them. So it's always best to try to edit as much as you can before importing into your map. Okay, now we can fix those, we can optimize that texture file even more at the end of the map. I'm just saving you some extra trouble from having to do that. I will show you when we're doing error correction, when we're doing file optimization, how to get those unneeded textures out of your map file if it does get a little cluttered. Okay, but I'm just warning you in advance. Just try to avoid that as much as possible. Okay, so this is the very basic principles of importing or exporting and importing. Okay, so the next episode, the next tutorial, I'm going to get into teaching you material editing. Okay, we're going to get into changing the siding on a building. Okay, some of these you can't really change the siding on, and we may have to look into another map for me to show you how I went about changing some of the siding. Some of it's just replacing the texture. Some of it's actually having to take this texture into paint.net and changing the texture from there. Okay, so we will do that next episode, and I hope you found this helpful. Make sure you're staying organized. Make sure you're doing the steps that I told you. If this is showing up as white, if your object's showing up as all white, that means you did not bring the textures to the front of the file. Okay, or you did something wrong. Okay, So make sure you're being patient when you're doing this. I know it's annoying, but when you get to the end of the map and you got a giant, you're going to, other people will have a giant map file that's over a gig in size. Yours is going to be like, a couple hundred megabytes, and you're going to be really happy because it's going to load up real quick in Farming Simulator. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful. I will see you in the next episode as we get into material editing, and then we'll do some animated objects. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.